Alright, get this. Angels have attacked and pretty much destroyed hell because the angels are pricks or whatever. The last pyre of hell is all that remains, and it's the key to preventing the end of all realms. It's on a train, and the forces of heaven are out to smash it, while you, the player, stand around with your deck in your hands. That's Monster Train. That's the basic premise of Monster Train, which is a roguelike deck builder, of which there are actually quite a few even on Game Pass. If you're not familiar with either of those terms or genres, subgenres, whatever you want to call them, I will tell you how Monster Train plays out, and you can pick it up from there, I'm sure. So the train that you've got to defend, this Monster Train, is first and foremost, it's not laid out as you'd expect a train to be. There's not a bunch of carriages. Instead, it's a quad decker. Maybe they should have called it Monster Quad Decker Bus, because it's not got carriages. You've got a singular carriage. On the top floor is a crystal, this pyre of hell that you're supposed to protect. Enemies flood in through the bottom floor for a turn-based battle with your characters. And when I say characters, it's more a turn-based battle with your deck of cards, which can include characters that you can place as well as some spells and things like that. After each turn plays out, any surviving monsters will move up a floor, and that will continue. If these monsters are surviving everything that you throw at them, then they'll eventually reach the top floor of the train, and they'll take a swing at your crystal, the pyre of hell, to knock off some of its health. The game is over when that crystal dies. And here comes the roguelike part. The game isn't over. You just start again and see if you can get further. And essentially that's what a roguelike is. So how does a battle play out? Usually 2 or 3 monsters will appear on the bottom floor of the train. Did I mention that you play the bad guys? You don't play the bad guys, but you play hell, who in this case are the good guys, fighting against the forces of heaven. Forces of heaven being bad guys isn't a particularly novel concept, but it's still nice to play as the red team every now and again. So you see the monsters in front of you. You have a selection of cards, a selection of usually 5 cards from your deck of about 20, and you get to play them. Some of these cards are going to be monster units. They'll have stats. They'll have a health stat and a damage stat, and you can place those on the different floors of the train. Some of them will be spell cards that have a more direct effect. So you might have a spell to cast a fireball at a particular enemy or something like that. And you have a certain number of action points. So each card has, they call it embers in this game, but you've got a cost to play that card. Typically at the start of the game, you have 3 points in your turn. It might cost you 1 point to put down each monster and 1 point to cast a spell or something like that. So you're limited in what you can do and what actions you can take, both by the number of action points that you've got and by the cards that are presented to you for that turn, which you have no control over. It might sound really obvious, all of this stuff that I'm saying. It's pretty common if you've played deck builders before, and there are tons and tons of them, but if you've never touched one, then this all might seem pretty wild to you. Now in Monster Train, what I just described is one battle. That battle will play out until you've defeated all the waves of enemies, and then you'll go on to, I'm going to call it a world map. It's not much of a world map, but it's your train's route from hell to heaven, from limbo to heaven, wherever you're going. And essentially you get a decision point. You can go left or you can go right. And there's a few stops along the way before your next encounter. So you have to have a look at what stops are available and weigh up which route you want to go. And the choices might be a shop to buy a new enemy card, or a shop to buy new spell cards, or a way to upgrade certain cards, or some more mysterious locations that have a bit more flavour to the writing. And then you move into the next battle. You repeat it. The enemies get progressively harder. Your train ride is actually surprisingly fairly short. There's only, I think, 9 stops and 3 bosses on a single run. I didn't complete a run to know exactly what happens at the end of it, but I think it's more or less nothing. So this is a problem with the game. The whole backstory of hell versus heaven is really inconsequential. So it's quite different to a game like Hades, where each time you're running through it, you're progressing a story and you're getting a clear motive to try again and try again and try again. Things are unfolding in front of you all the time. In Monster Train, you just do it because you do it. It doesn't really deliver any kind of story beyond the initial premise that you're the hell guys. Go, go, go. And okay, that's not the end of the world. A lot of roguelikes are very successful without having a story. Hades kind of rewrote the genre in a sense. Most roguelikes before it were cut and dry. Do it for the sake of doing it. A lot of people like that. Me, not so much. Still, what a roguelike really needs to be successful though is it needs to give you compelling reasons to try again. And if it's not going to do that with story, it needs to do it with mechanics. It needs to do it with the kind of meta progression systems. Monster Train actually does fairly well here in most regards as far as I can tell. So when you start a run, you have to pick a primary and a secondary. What are they? Do they call them races? I'm not sure. I'm going to go with races. But initially when you start the game, you have 2 of these races unlocked. You've got basic hell demons, I guess, like red guys with horns, you know, hell. And some weird planty people that have more of a focus on regeneration skills. And you pick one to be your primary race and one to be secondary to make up your army as you go through the game, to make up your deck of cards, I should say. Now, the game supports multiple armies. There appears to be about 6 different ones available that you have to unlock through progression, and each of those armies has its own progression path as well to level up and make new cards available. I actually think they've got a fairly compelling metagame progression system in there. The idea of being able to progress the different armies and pick your 2 favourites and mix and match your cards in that way gives you a lot to play for, but the game delivers it too slowly. So I played the game for about 2.5 hours. In that time, I had 2 runs. The first one, I think I died on the second boss out of the 3 bosses. And on the last run, I got 1 room from the end of the game. In that time, I saw no noteworthy progression, nothing to kind of draw me back in, nothing to get hooks into me to make me want to have another run. And it could just be that this is an issue with the pacing at the start of the game. It could be that if you invest in it and you play more, things start to unlock a little bit more quickly. But games live and die by these first impressions, this early gameplay. So particularly for someone like me that's not got any kind of affinity for roguelikes or deck builders, it really needed to establish why I want to keep playing in a big way early on. And Monster Train didn't really do that for me. But who cares? I'm just me, right? Maybe you love that kind of game. What else has it got going for it? So there's no voiceover work whatsoever. Like I said earlier, the story doesn't progress in any meaningful way, as far as I can tell. And kind of surprisingly, I don't think it really plays a humour angle whatsoever at all. So, I mean, if it does, it's not funny. So you've got a pretty dry, mechanical game here. I'll say the art is good. The units that you can place, the spells that you can cast, they've all been well drawn. It's obviously not a big technical showpiece, it is a 2D game, but the art is good. The sound is passable. It's a slightly odd one actually. I've never seen an Xbox game with a menu option to keep playing background music when you minimize the app, so I'd say there's probably a little bit of lazy porting going on. But you know, it's a small indie game and you can forgive a redundant menu option. Oh, and this is the awkward moment mid-recording that I remember seeing an option for crossplay. Is there a multiplayer mode in this game that I completely missed? I'm going to check that and smoothly carry on recording because I'm professional like that. Wait there. Yeah, no, not really. Okay, I just had a look in that brief moment, and the only kind of multiplayer there is global leaderboards and a multiplayer. It calls itself Hell Rush, but you basically play the single player game and you race against other players. So there's no kind of head-to-head multiplayer as such. That's it. That's Monster Train. It's on Game Pass, Xbox and PC. There is a piece of DLC available, but that is traditional content pack, so a new boss, a new race, things like that. Nothing particularly slimy. The game that you get on the subscription service is a full, entirely playable game with no nickel and diming, as they say in the old US of A. I actually have no idea what a nickel or a dime is, so let me know. That'll be interesting. Let me know in the comments if you've got this far into the video. Tell me what's a nickel, what's a dime, and yeah, subscribe to the channel. And oh, you can tell me if you're going to play Monster Train as well. That makes a lot of sense. What's a nickel? What's a dime? Are you going to play Monster Train? Yep. See you next time.